Institute. And today's webinar is designed for principals, new principals, that are new to the School Improvement Institute, or SI2. So this presentation is going to be very general in the beginning, and then we'll really look at the whole SI2 process and organizational structure. So just a little bit of background. Our organization is the American Student Achievement Institute, or ASA. We are a nonprofit organization. We were founded in '96. We incorporated in 2000. We're located in Bloomington, Indiana, and our mission is to raise student achievement and close achievement gaps. And our expertise is in the areas of data-driven systemic change and also creating a movement. A little bit about how ASA started. We actually started out as an experiment that Lilly Endowment wanted to do back in 1990. They wanted to see what would happen if business leaders taught educators about how much rigor is needed for students to succeed in the global economy, and also how to use data to drive systemic change. I was one of 6 educators who were involved to be part of that initiative. I was at Indian Creek High School at the time, and we learned so much from the business community, specifically about how to use data, but then also about change and how to drive change in school improvement. At our school, we significantly raised our expectations for student achievement, and we really focused on enrolling kids in rigorous math and science courses and making sure that they succeeded in mastered content in those courses. Across the board, we were looking at all of our students. And then we also worked on increasing the percentage who were accepted into post-secondary and who were academically prepared for post-secondary. And in all those areas, we just experienced tremendous improvements. So we just kind of as a summer hobby for fun, I started teaching other schools how to do this. And word of mouth, schools started learning about us, and we started teaching maybe 10, 12 schools each summer. And then in 2000, we incorporated, and everything just kept growing. In 2005, I left my full-time job. I was then at the Department of Education. Left my job and started doing this work full-time. So today, our staff supports 341 different steering teams in several different initiatives, including about 67 who are involved with our School Improvement Institute. So here's our team. The person that SIT schools work with the most is Mary Beth Granderson. She is our strategic planning specialist, and she serves specifically the SI2 schools. Mary Beth has been with us for almost 10 years, and she is just fabulous, very knowledgeable about school improvement, and has a ton of experience with coaching school improvement teams. So let's look at what is SIT2. First of all, we're not a one-size-fits-all model. We don't believe there is a one-size-fits-all model. If there were, schools would be just implemented and all schools would be successful. So what we are is an improvement process. Schools that are enrolled in SIT2 use a vision-based, data-driven process that we've developed called Vision to Action. And basically, those are the steps that schools go through. I wanted to point out before 3 of the steps that there's a data study involved. We are very heavily data-driven, both when we set goals and when we identify root causes and when we determine if the interventions that you put in place are having an impact. So we'll go through each of those steps in a minute, but I wanted to make sure that you all realize that we are very, very heavily data-driven. Lots of different kinds of schools have participated in SI2. Very rural schools, tiny schools, urban schools. We've had several schools in Indianapolis, public schools, Kokomo, Gary, Fort Wayne, as well as very, very small, tiny rural schools. Elementary, middle, and high school, we've had very high-achieving schools that have participated in SI2, and also very low-achieving schools when they started with us. Schools that are heavily low-income, as well as more affluent schools, schools that are heavy minority, as well as schools that have no minority. So because it's a process, it works virtually anywhere because every school will use this process to figure out where they need to improve. So just a little bit about what folks have said about SI2. We've not sought this, but we have had some national recognition from organizations that have worked with our schools. And the one maybe that I'm very proud of is the Council of Chief State School Officers, who did a policy brief on school improvement in 2006, and they cited our work. We were one of just 8 improvement processes that organization cited. They especially picked up on the fact that we help schools work through resistance. That I thought was kind of nice. Another organization is the Annie Casey Foundation. They work to help communities work with schools, and they did a report called Connecting Schools, Families, and Communities, and they also had been working with one of our schools, noted that that school had significantly involved the community in school improvement, and then cited our work in their report. Another organization that discovered us was Pathways to College Network in Boston. This was in our very earlier years, 2004. They were looking for organizations that were using data to inform decision making, and they cited our research-based effective practices as being an example of that. Former Governor Daniels was talking to a group that we had convened one of our conferences, and after learning about us, he told our organizations that he was fascinated by SI2, and he asked the 900 people that were present at that meeting to tell other schools in their district to join SI2. I think he really picked up on the fact that we were data-driven, that we were asking tough questions. Our schools asked tough questions, and they really were doing the kind of work that would result in significant improvement. The Indiana Educational Roundtable, I guess, again, as we first were expanding our work to a lot of schools, they wrote that ASA was making remarkable progress in Indiana schools. Participant testimony, this is Title I coordinator in IPS, Indianapolis Public Schools, and she talks about how in the past that they had several audits, and that they maybe had not done as well, but because of the process that we were using with they had done very well in their Title I audits, and that their district had not been cited for any major compliance issues since they started working with SI2. So we're real pleased with this. We do try to incorporate all of the DOE school improvement requirements and the title school improvement requirements into our work. I'll show you that in a sec. But it enables our schools to make sure that they are being compliant with others' expectations for school improvement. Kokomo Schools, this was some comments from Sandy Clinton, who was their Title I director, is no longer with the district, but she talks about how ASA, because of ASA and SI2, the schools have become more focused, more cohesive, and that our staff has provided exceptional support and guidance. So I thought that was kind of nice to hear from Sandy. So I wanted to talk a little bit then about how we work, and also look at some of the data that we've pulled together. You know, when all those nice things that people said about SI2 and about our organization were just words. What we really want to monitor is how are the students in the schools that we serve doing. This was this is data from a fellow that did his dissertation on our schools. He was looking at the annual change in the percentage of passing ISTEP scores, and he saw that when schools first started working with us, when the schools percentage of passing ISTEP tests were about the same, that after 1 year they started to be different, and after 2 years, when the interventions were being fully implemented, he started to see significant changes in really in school improvement, in increases in the percentage of passing ISTEP tests. And then here's other data that shows the increase in the percentage of ISTEP and ECS tests. between SI2 schools and in all schools in the state. So again, this is data that makes us feel that the time that we put into this initiative is worthwhile. The staff that we dedicate to this, as well as our resources, and the resources that come to us from districts in terms of the enrollment fee that schools pay. So I'm really pleased with this. Okay, so let's look then at the organizational structure. Let's look a little bit more at SI2. So schools that work with us put together a steering team. The steering team has 6 members. It's a principal, 2 teachers, counselor, parent, and a representative from the community's economic development. In the middle schools and high schools, we'd like one of those teachers to also be a math teacher, since math is such a gatekeeper course for other courses. And these 6 folks, we like to emphasize when we first start working with this team is they are not decision makers. They are school improvement managers or facilitators. And so they're making sure that the process happens. They're making sure that it happens with integrity and it's high quality and it's in a timely manner and efficient. So they're just they're the steering team. They're the managers. Then another organizational level is the school improvement team. So let me go back and emphasize again, this is the steering team of the managers. Then the school improvement team is a large group. We open the school improvement team to anyone who wants to join it. So all community members are invited to join the school improvement team, as are all faculty members. For schools that have been in SI2 for a while, this is a combination of the full faculty and what we used to call the community council. So we now have the school improvement team that is everyone. The Department of Ed does require that on the school improvement team that there are teachers, parents, and community members. But we ask our schools to invite all teachers to be part of the school improvement team and all community members to be part of the school improvement team. Really creates a broad-based set of perceptions to get all the different stakeholder groups to the table. Okay, then this group, the school improvement team, has discussions. In the past, we've done those discussions as face-to-face discussions. It's been extremely time-consuming. And this year, we're starting these as online discussions. So each month, the school improvement team will watch a webinar. We may ask them also to look at your school's data, either your achievement data or your root cause data, and then they'll answer some questions. So on the screen right now is kind of what it will look like when they log in, and they'll see, the step of the process, and then really a YouTube video that they can click to kind of get some background information before they enter the discussion. And then the discussion part is going to be just like Facebook would be. On the screen you're seeing just kind of a sample. Jane Doe said that all students deserve a rigorous curriculum, and 3 people agreed with that comment. And then Joe Smith said, that all students deserve extra help, and then 15 people agreed with that. So there's a lot of agreement that kids needed extra help in the school. So, so this is how the discussions will go. What the steering team will do is they'll send out an announcement through our system. It's going to be basically just entering a date and pushing a button. But all of the local school improvement team members will just get an email through the system saying, okay, we're ready to have this discussion now, and then they'll go to the website and get the prompt and background information and participate in this discussion. So that's how this discussion will happen. There are 6 different discussions, and here's what they are, and then from these discussions, the school steering team will develop the products that go into the school improvement plan. Okay, and then the other organizational level that we have is the student body, and we do want every single student to participate in these discussions. So the way it works is, again, we'll send out, we'll give the school a discussion prompt, and then the schools will bring the students together into small groups to have that discussion. In almost all of our schools, even in the upper elementary grades, there's usually a student facilitator and then a student recorder, and we'll provide all kinds of tips for the students on how to be a good facilitator and And so, the school, you'll have everything that you need for that. Most schools will say, okay, in the next half hour, it's going to be an SI2 discussion period, and they'll just, stop instruction for that half hour and have this discussion, and then come back. In our middle schools and high schools, sometimes those discussions will rotate through periods. So one month it'll be second period, the next month it'll be third period. And we've had a lot of schools too who have tied this to academic standards. So they might do this, but then tie it to a writing assignment as well. So there's ways to incorporate this with the academic instruction. Okay, so basically then we've talked about 3 levels in our organizational structure: the steering team, the school improvement team, which is a big group and includes anyone who wants to join basically, and then the student body, which includes every single student. As you can imagine, the input that we get from students is really rich. We think it's really important. One other thing back in the school improvement team, I've mentioned a couple of times that that's a large group. We will also provide for you tools to use to bring a large group to consensus quickly. So it has not been cumbersome to have 30 or so people on that school improvement team. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here, but back to the student discussion topics. Here's the kids' topics, and then the products that their feedback will end up in. So November and December describe the ideal teacher, describe ideal students, and then those ideas will end up in the vision statement. In January, we'll give the kids some of the school's achievement data and ask them, what data fields do you think we should improve? So the kids are kind of having discussions that correspond with the discussions that the adults are having. Okay, so let's look at the process now that all of this kind of supports. The first step of the process is getting ready, and in this process we're putting together the steering team. We'll do that in September, and then in October we'll put together the school improvement team. We're also delegating tasks, and we're also collecting data. A lot of the data we are going to pull for you off of other organizations' websites, specifically the Department of Ed. But some of the data, especially the root cause data, you'll collect through a survey and some short answer questions that we'll provide. Then in November, you'll meet with your school improvement team via the online system, so it'll be an online discussion. In November will be the first online discussion with the school improvement team, and the topic of that is just to introduce SI2. We'll probably put out some discussion prompts so that they can talk about what might be exciting about this, what might be the challenges of this. We definitely want to see what they think are going to be the challenges so that your steering team can address those. We always try to predict the resistance and then head it off before it happens. So if we can find out right in the front, why people think that this may be cumbersome, that gives you an opportunity to address those things. And also, if it's Jane Doe that has a lot of reservations, that gives you a chance to talk specifically with Jane Doe about some of her reservations and how you might head those off before they happen. So that's November. It's just kind of introduction, getting ready, the other thing we do in November is just kind of get the vocabulary out there so everybody's talking the same terms. Then in December, there will be another online discussion. On that discussion, we're asking 4 questions. Well, first of all, we'll present some content about global economics and about what high rigor and post-secondary completion will do for your community in terms of impacting income levels, not only of the students who have completed a post-secondary education, but also looking at what happens to income levels, say, of high school dropouts when the community's percentage of post-secondary completers goes up. We'll look at job security. We'll look at lots of different reasons for why academic rigor is so important. And then after your the school improvement team members learn that in the webcast, then we'll say, okay, let's look at our vision. And the questions that they'll be responding to is, in our heart of hearts, what do all kids think in our heart of hearts, what do all kids deserve? And then what do we think in order to get those things for kids? What would be the ideal adult practices and what would be the ideal student practices? And then we come back to, okay, if everything's ideal, now what's our ideal student data? And that's a really interesting discussion. Some schools immediately say, well, our ideals are that 100% of our kids are wildly successful. They've all, in a high school, scored a 3 or better on an AP exam, or they've all graduated on time, or we're looking at ideals. But other schools have really trouble looking at ideals, and they might say, really, we think that we have ideals for 80% of our kids. And we'll really have a strong discussion here about, why not 100%? And, if we're talking about dreams, should it be 100%? And if it's not 100%, what kind of services would we be providing for the 20% that we don't have dreams for? So that is an extremely rich discussion. It can be a very tough discussion. But it's probably the most important discussion that we have in our whole process is just who do we have dreams for and how high are those dreams. So okay, so after we've been in dreamland in December, then in January we'll come back to reality. Your school improvement team will watch a webcast about how to set goals, about how to look at data. We make data very, very simple. All of our data is just the percentage of students who have reached a certain benchmark. We want that data to be incredibly simple so that everybody can engage in that discussion. So they'll watch a video, and then we'll ask them to dig through your school's data. We'll provide links for them so that they can get into your data and look at the data. And then we'll ask them what data, the questions will be what data concern them, what data please them, and where do they see achievement gaps. And then based on that input, your steering team will do a preliminary set of primary areas for improvement. Those are very broad areas like math or English or maybe even a specific course. And then we'll dig down even deeper and develop SMART goals. Those two terms, primary areas for improvement and SMART goals, are terms that our Indiana Department of Education began using, and so we're incorporating the same terminology into our work so that when you talk to the Department of Ed, everybody's speaking the same language. SMART goals are very specific goals. They tell who you want to improve, what the benchmark is that you're going to use to see if they've improved, what your baseline data is, what your target data is, and what the target data date is. If it's a year from now or 2 years from now, when you want to reach this goal. So, so you'll come out of this step with very specific, well-written targets, data targets, or SMART goals. Okay, so then after you have those goals, then in February, we'll want to have a discussion about, okay, what's getting in the way? Why haven't we already reached that goal? So we'll do a root cause analysis, and in that root cause analysis, we'll help you look at two different things. One is our ASA, Elements of High Achieving Schools. So there's 7 areas that we'll have you look at, things like how rigorous is your curriculum, how engaging is your instruction, how do you use classroom assessments to inform teacher practices, how do you provide extra help, do your kids, are your students motivated? So we'll help you look at those areas, and then we're also going to help you look at the Department of Ed's turnaround principles and really do some self-reflection on the degree to which you are already incorporating those turnaround principles in your school. We collect that data through 3 different ways. Part of the data is coming from surveys that we do, that you'll do. We'll provide them, but they're online surveys. You'll do them with your students, with your faculty, and with your parents, and with community members. And then we'll help you have discussions about that data. Each of the surveys has the same kind of question on it, so we might be asking questions about expectations. We'll ask the kids, do your teachers have high expectations of you? And then we'll ask teachers, do you have high expectations? And it's very, very interesting how people see these, people will respond differently to those questions. The kids, the teachers will say, well, of course we have high expectations of our kids. And then the kids will say, our teachers do not have high expectations of us. And that just opens up an incredibly rich discussion about, why are people answering these questions differently. So we'll help you in the first part, in the getting ready step at the beginning, we'll help you collect all of that data, the survey data, and then there's some short answer questions that we'll have you look at the responses, your responses to those. The steering team fills out those questions. And then there's some other discussion questions that we'll put into this data section. So when your school improvement team gets to this step, they'll go online, they'll watch a short webcast about root causes, what they are, the data that they're going to see, how it was collected, what it means. And then we'll provide a link to your school's data, and your school improvement team, your teachers and your community folks will look at that data, and the question will be, in thinking about your specific SMART goal, what's getting in the way? So if your SMART goal is to improve the percentage of kids that have mastered a specific standard, then we're going to look at, okay, what's getting in the way in that? And they'll identify those areas that they think are getting in the way, and that will all become then a discussion, and then your school improvement, your steering team will be able to take ideas from that discussion and come up with your preliminary root causes. So, and then you'll send those out for consensus. So, so that's how you come up with the root causes, and that's the explanation for why your school is not doing any better than it is. Why isn't it achieving at a higher rate in those SMART goal areas? And then you'll use those root causes to focus your interventions. So in February, we'll start looking at your interventions. And the question then that your school improvement team will look at is basically, okay, what are we going to do about our root causes? If one of our root causes is that kids aren't engaged in their learning, then what are we going to do about that? If one of our root causes is that while we think we're providing a rigorous curriculum, in reality we've watered the curriculum down, what are we going to do about that? So when we get to interventions, we'll be looking at best practices to see what other schools have done, what the research shows are ways to address those root causes. As to help you explore different interventions, we will bring a lot of practitioners to the table in a statewide conference to talk about the more widespread root causes and how they address those in their schools. So this is a conference of strategies that work. There are 60 breakout sessions, all featuring Indiana educators and community members who have implemented proven practices. In other words, there's data behind those practices for raising student achievement. So what we say to schools like you is, come shop for strategies. Come to the conference, know what your root causes are before you get there. And if it's student engagement, then go to the sessions on student engagement. If it's using classroom instruction, classroom assessments to inform instruction, then go to the sessions that are about that. So you'll come to the conference, you'll explore all these sessions. We also, at lunch, sit by root causes. And so you'll be at a table at lunch with other people that either have the same issues that your school has or that have resolved some of those issues that your school has. And so we'll chat at lunch as well. And then we also bring in 2 nationally known keynotes. There's a morning keynote and a lunch keynote. And we do bring in folks that you would normally hear if you had gone to a national conference. So we've been very, very pleased with this conference. We do open the conference up to any school, anybody who wants to come, but really the conference is a step of our process. It's that intervention exploration step. In addition to the conference, we'll provide lots of other resources for you to start exploring possible interventions. Okay, so also just wanted to mention we provide an award that we call the Top Gainer Award. for schools that improve at a specific level that we're looking for this award. And we decided to, for a long time we gave plaques. We decided to give banners that schools could hang in their gym right next to their athletic banners, or they could hang them in the front of the school. So you can see in this slide, there's some of the steering team members from Turkey Run, both the elementary school and the high school, receiving their award. And then the photo on the right is Logansport, who we walked in their school for another initiative, and here was their banners hanging in the front of their school, which was really nice to see. So okay, so the conference then is used to explore interventions, and then that is the intervention step is the last discussion with the school improvement team, with the community and the full faculty. And then after that meeting, we've got to prepare for those interventions. We want to make sure that this process is not just a process on paper, but it actually gets into practice and that it's done well. We want to make sure that each intervention is fully implemented and that it's implemented with integrity. So after we've identified those interventions, then we want to look at, okay, what professional development do the teachers need? What resources do they need? Are there materials? Is there funding? What do we need to get in order for that intervention to be pulled off well? And then we'll come up with an annual calendar. And really that annual calendar is what drives the implementation. It's what drives the action part of vision to action. So we feel like that annual calendar is really important. That gives us a way to be accountable for making sure that each step gets implemented and that the interventions get implemented well. And it allows you to monitor that, and then if you've chosen to have our staff be involved with helping your steering team with additional support, we monitor that as well. So, okay, so that's preparation, and that's then the final step of the process. So I'm going to pause for a minute here. I see I have at least one hand up, and I've discovered some of the slides have timers on them, and they're advancing on their own, so I may have to make them go back a couple times. But let's see. Lynn Pierce has a question. And I think maybe we might have had a mix-up about the start time, Lynn's telling me. So Lynn, thank you for bringing that to my attention. That explains why we just had a few people on it at 3 o'clock. We did start at 3:06 actually. So yeah, sorry about that. So we are going to archive this. For those of you who maybe came in late, this will be archived. So if you missed the first part, you'll be able to go on and watch it. And I apologize. I'm just looking here to see. You're right. We did send out an email that said 3:30, so I have started early, and I apologize for that. And especially with you guys being new principals, great first impression. We are very, very committed to providing everything in a very organized and efficient way, and I apologize. But it's one of the reasons we started right on what I thought was on time, because I thought we had published like that at the start time. So my apology to everybody. And let's just pause here too. Matter of fact, Lynn, let me do this real quickly. Lynn, I'm going to send you your audio pin. Let me see if there's anybody else I can talk to. Okay, James, James Meany. Yeah, James, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Wonderful. Did you come in at 3:30 also?
I did come in at 3:30.
Okay, and do you remember like where I was in the slides when do you remember what I was talking about when you first came in?
Yeah, you were in February, which gave me a clue that either you covered 7 months in 2 minutes, or I was, something was off. So you were in February. The slide I remember said February at the top.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm going to go back, and then we'll just, if you guys don't mind, and James, let me get your opinion. Why don't I just go back and I'll hit that first part right now, so that It'll be a little bit out of order, but at least we'll make sure everybody gets content. Does that sound like an okay idea?
I'm certainly fine with that, yeah.
Okay, okay, let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so bear with me here. James, I'm going to put your mute back on so that you can have background conversations and we all won't be able to hear you if you want. So, okay, very good. Okay, so let's go back. And we need to go up to February. Okay. Really, you didn't miss much of the process, but let's see. One of the things we showed people was like how to use your control panel. So and you've discovered that if you have a question, just raise your hand, and then that lets me know to unmute you. Or you can type a question in, which is what Lynn did. Okay, so let me go ahead here. Talked a little bit about our organization. So we are a nonprofit organization. We were founded in '96. Our mission is to raise student achievement and close achievement gaps. And our expertise really is on data-driven systemic change. And we also really enjoy creating grassroots movements, which is what we kind of view SI2 as being. The SI2 started as an initiative that Lilly Endowment did for a couple of years in 1990. They wanted to see what would happen if business leaders taught educators about how much rigor kids needed in order to be competitive in a global economy, and then also how to use data to drive systemic change. And I was very, very lucky. There were 6 educators in the state who were selected to participate in that. I was at Indian Creek High School at the time in Trafalgar, and I was selected to do that. So we put together a team at Indian Creek and got to meet with some really wonderful, internationally known leaders from the business community who had expertise in systemic change. People like Peter Senge, who wrote The Fifth Discipline. I mean, just really big names. At our school, we significantly raised expectations across the board for our academic achievement. We increased the percentage of students passing very rigorous math and science courses back in 1990, before anybody was talking about STEM. And then we also really focused on increasing the percentage of our kids who started and were successful in post-secondary, and that went up amazingly. So we had such success in our school that I just started teaching other schools how to do this for fun in the summers. We would meet with 7 to 10 schools each summer on our summer vacations and just teach them how to do it. And schools started telling other schools. We incorporated in 2000 because just the demand was there, and worked at doing this part-time for a while we had full-time other jobs. And then in 2005, we finally were at the place where we could bridge to a full-time nonprofit, and we all left our other positions. I was at the Department of Education at the time, and started doing this full-time. So that was a bunch of years ago, and it's been very, very good work. I have enjoyed it a lot. Today we support 341 steering teams in different initiatives, including just under 70 in the SI2 initiative. We have a team of 7 that support the work. The person that you'll be working with is Mary Beth Anderson. She is one of our strategic planning specialists. She's been with us for about 10 years, and she's fabulous. Very knowledgeable about schools. She has supported hundreds of schools over the years, and it really knows this work. So I think you'll be very pleased working with her. So in looking at what is SI2, we always like to point out to everybody that we're not a one-size-fits-all. We don't believe there is a one-size-fits-all. If there were, we'd all be doing it, and every school would be fantastic. So we're not a model. We're not a model that you're going to replicate. What we are is an improvement process. We've developed this process called Vision to Action that starts with dreaming, drops data in immediately. We even put data into the vision. And then, we work through this process of helping schools look at goals and root causes and designing appropriate interventions. And one of the things I want everyone to see on this slide is we are very data rich. 3 steps in our process are dependent upon data. when we look at goals and our root causes, and when you evaluate the impact of the interventions, we're looking at data heavy duty. And then we put data right into the vision. We say, what's our dream data? And we define that right up front. So very, very heavily data driven. All kinds of schools participate in this initiative. Because it's not a model, it works just about everywhere. But every school ends up someplace different as they go through the process. So we've worked with a lot of Indianapolis public schools, Fort Wayne schools, Gary, so a lot of urban schools, also a lot of little tiny small town schools or rural schools like Turkey Run, and elementary, middle, high school. We've also done this with some career centers. And then we've worked with very high achieving schools, low achieving schools, very low income schools, very affluent schools, high minority, low minority. Because it's a process that every school uses depending on what their data says, it really works just about anywhere, or works anywhere. Okay, a little bit about what people say about us, just to let you know that others respect, I think, our work and this initiative. This is what I'm especially proud of. The Council of Chief State School Officers learned about us from the Indiana Department of Education and wrote about us in a policy brief that they did. And one of the things I really liked about what they wrote about us is that it was about the work that we do to address resistance as it's happening in change. So that was nice. We've never sought any of this recognition, but what happens is groups learn about us from schools that we work with, or in this case from the Department of Ed, and then they write about us. So this is a document that Annie E. Casey Foundation in Maryland came out with. They had been working with one of our schools and noted that the community involvement in school improvement was so different than what they were used to. And so they wrote about our work, and we thought that was kind of nice, that they recognized how we involve the community and schools and families in school improvement. This is another group that, this was back in 2004 when everyone was just starting to talk about using data to drive change, and this group was looking for initiatives that were using data, and they talked about how we were an excellent example of that. And then former Governor Daniels actually was a keynote presenter for us for one of our conferences, and he learned all about our work, had lunch with several of our principals, and when he got up to make his remarks, he started out by saying that he was just fascinated by SI2, and he told the 900 people that were in the room to tell other schools in their districts to join SI2. I think he was impressed that our schools were asking very tough questions about what was happening in the buildings, and they were looking at data. I think he just really respected the process, and I was very pleased that he saw the value in what we were doing. The Indiana Education Roundtable, this is also said that in their newsletter that they used to have, that we were making remarkable progress in Indiana schools, and again, they knew that because we were data-driven. And then maybe more importantly, some of our participant data testimony. Minetta Richardson was the Title I Program Administrator in IPS in Indianapolis, and she said that in their district they had 4 audits, and she cited, because of their work with SI2, their district had not been cited for any major compliance issues from any of their title audits. In a district the size of Indianapolis Public Schools, I think that really says something. IPS also hired an outside researcher to kind of look at their work with us, who recommended that they continue their work with us. They were really pleased with what was happening. So, and then here's another one. I know some of the folks on this webinar are from Kokomo. Sandy Quinton was used to be the Title I director in Kokomo. She's no longer there, but she talked about, sent us an email and just talked about how the schools have become more focused and involved and cohesive in their efforts in Kokomo. In Kokomo, all of their schools are involved in SI2. And then she also was kind enough to say that the ASA staff had provided exceptional support and guidance through the process. So was really pleased to hear that. So in looking at does SI2 work, a couple things I want to look at. One is, all those nice things that people say about us, I mean, that always makes us feel good. But the bottom line is school improvement going up in the schools that we work with? So every year we pull together the data from our schools, and then we check over the years to make sure that things are still happening the way we want them to be. This was actually an outside study. A fellow did his dissertation on us, and what he discovered is that he looked at the annual increase in the percentage of passing ISTEP tests. And in his group, he had non-SI2 schools and then the schools that we're working with. And in the beginning, you can see that the increase was about the same. But after implementing the interventions for 1 year, he started to see that the SI2 schools were improving at a greater rate than the schools that we didn't work with. And then after 2 years of implementation, he was really seeing some differences. So very pleased with that. This is data that we put together a couple of years ago. And again, we're just always wanting to know, are things happening the way we want them to be happening in our schools? And we were very, very pleased that in that time period, the percentage of the increases in the percentage of passing ISTEP and ECA tests was higher in the SI2 schools than all schools than state average. So I was very pleased with that. Okay, so we go on then to organizational structure, and then we'll be kind of caught up. So the organizational structure is this. There's 3 different levels of our organizational structure. The first one is the school improvement team. School improvement team is 6 people: principal, 2 teachers, counselor parent, and an economic development rep. The 2 teachers in a middle school or in high school, we would like one of the 2 teachers to be a math teacher, because math is such a gatekeeper course. And the first thing we say to the steering team is that you are not the decision makers, you are just the managers of the process. So they don't have any special power other than that they can convene a meeting and start a discussion. The economic development rep, we think is extremely important to have us be part of this group and also as part of the discussions, because they are the ones that really understand global economics and the level of rigor that your students are going to need, be it in kindergarten or 3rd grade, 9th grade, 12th grade, the rigor that the kids are going to need to go into the workforce with in order to be competitive in a global economy. We're always looking at high skill, high wage positions that we'd like our students to be prepared for. And so we think having that economic development rep at the table is really important. All counties have an economic development council, and we'll help you find these people if you need our help with that. So that's the steering team. They're the worker bees. They're the managers of school improvement. Okay, then the thinker bees and the decision makers are what we call the school improvement team. This used to be 2 different groups. We used to have 2 groups. One was called the full faculty, the other was called the community council, and we more recently have convened them this year into one group called the school improvement team. We're trying to be sensitive to how many meetings schools are having with SI2 and how much time it's taking. So we're convening this year those 2 groups into one group, that's the school improvement team. To meet PL 221 requirements, we have to make sure that the school improvement team has teachers, parents, and community members on it. To meet our requirements for our rubric and our standards for SI2 and ASA, we want to make sure that every teacher has been invited to be part of the school improvement team, and all of your community members have been invited to be part of the school improvement team. We really like to give everybody a chance to have a voice. We think that's really important for the richness of your discussions, and also helps you to get past some of the resistance that you could have if this were a select group. We will give you tools to help you have all the discussions with this group, which may end up being a large group. We'll also give you consensus building tools so that even if you have a group of 30, 40, even if you had 100, you could reach consensus quickly with your group of folks. So, so that's the school improvement team. They're the ones that are going to have all the discussions and provide feedback and then reach consensus on what the various components of your school improvement plan and your school improvement process will be. I love this part. I think this is one of the main reasons why SI2 is so successful. It's because of the richness of the discussions, and having all those different folks at the table is what makes it so rich. Just wanted to give you a heads up in terms of how those people will have these discussions. And this is also new this year and also done as a time saver. We used to have face-to-face discussions with the school improvement team, and of course it used to be the full faculty and the community council as two different groups. This year we're going to go to online discussions. Schools may still do the face-to-face discussions if you'd like to do that. We've heard from a couple of our alumni schools that they're going to still have the face-to-face discussions. So you kind of have a choice here. But you'll have these resources in case you want to do an online discussion. So the way it will work is this. You will notify, and we'll again give you a tool, you'll notify your school improvement team members that a discussion window has opened and when it's going to close. And we'll give you a tool so that all you have to do basically is enter one date and push a button, and all of your school improvement team members will get an email saying discussion's on, and here's the deadline. So then, and it will also give them a link. They'll click on the link. The link will open up a page that looks like this. It'll give them a little bit of an intro and then a short webcast. The webcast, our target is to keep those webcasts at 20 minutes. They'll watch the webcast. The webcast will give them an introduction to the discussion. And then in the discussion part, they'll just, the discussion part will be a lot like Facebook. So there'll be an inquiry question, then there'll be a text box, and then they'll enter, whatever they want to say into the text box and then post it. When they post, their name will go with it, and then there will be a section where other people can agree with their thought and or enter their own comments in. So you can see in this case 3 people agreed with the Jane Doe's comment, but 15 people agreed with Joe Smith's comments. So that is getting some more play in the discussion. So from that discussion then, the school improvement team, the steering team will take all of those ideas, come up with a draft for whatever the product is. In this case, it's a vision statement, and then send that vision statement out for consensus. We will also give you tips on how to engage everybody in the product as well. But we definitely want to make sure that everybody's in agreement, because if they're not, you'll get resistance and people will shoot you in the back when they're not in front of you. So we think that consensus is very important in the process. So these discussions will happen every month. Here are the discussion questions and then the products that will come out of these discussions. And we'll go through this when we get to the process step as well. And then the third organizational structure component is the student body. That we are going to do face-to-face. We debated whether or not to have this be an online discussion as well, but almost all of our schools said, no, this needs to be with the kids face-to-face. They just thought this was really rich. So the way this works is that we'll provide an inquiry question that corresponds to the question that the adults are discussing. And in almost all of our schools, there's a student facilitator who leads the discussion, and then a student recorder who's recording what everybody says. We'll provide some guidelines for the student facilitator in terms of, how to set up the discussion, how to keep it positive, how do we avoid people being talked about in these discussions. We'll provide all of that, those guidelines ahead of time. And then the student facilitator will share those guidelines with the group before the discussion begins. And so here are the discussion topics. So in a lot of our schools, they'll just say, okay, then the next 30 minutes is going to be an SI2 discussion time, and the teachers are all set up to, to lead the discussion, or the students are set up and know what classrooms to go into to lead the discussions. In some of our schools, they've tied this to a writing prompt so that they can tie it to the Indiana Academic Standards or the Common Core Standards. So it can be, it can be woven into your academic work as well. So these discussions are incredibly rich. We have found that the students will say the exact same things that the $10,000 educational consultant will say. They just put it in their terms. They're not going to call it differentiated instruction, but they will describe differentiated instruction. So it's really, really rich. We think that, again, that this is one of the reasons why our program seems to be so successful, is because we listen to the kids. Okay, so that got us up to, we're almost caught up now, that got us up to the process. So September, October was just getting ready, figuring out who's going to be on your steering team, recruiting the school improvement team members, making sure everybody gets invited, delegating tasks to different steering team members. That's another thing that we do that I think makes our process so successful is of the 6 steering team members, the worker bees, each steering team member will have a unique set of tasks. So one person will be in charge of making sure that those school improvement team discussions happen. Another person will be in charge of making sure that the student discussions happen. Another one will be in charge of making sure that everybody gets surveyed. So we'll help you delegate the tasks so that everything doesn't fall on one person. Principals have told us that they love that because it's all organized and everything's delegated, and everything's not falling on their shoulders, nor do you have to worry about the organizational structure of it all, because we're doing that for you. And then the other thing that we do in September and October is collect the data, and especially we'll be doing there the student surveys and parent surveys, community surveys, and faculty surveys. So we're getting ready, and then in November we have the first online discussion in the first student body discussion. And then in December we talk about vision. That discussion, I think, is probably the most powerful discussion in the entire process. I love this discussion. Basically, what will happen is folks will watch a webcast about global economics that really makes a case for raising rigor. And then we define what rigor looks like, and how it's measured, and then we go into the discussion about vision. The discussion questions are, what do all kids deserve? And then based on what we think kids deserve, what are ideal adult practices in the school and community? What are ideal student practices? And then finally, what's the ideal student achievement data? And that last question is really amazing. Many folks in the community will say, well, our ideals are that all students would be just wildly successful. Our vision is that they all get the best score possible on an AP exam, or that they all, pass the algebra end of course test in 8th grade, or they're all reading at grade level in 3rd grade. So, but other schools or other people will say, it's really not 100%. Our dream is that 80% would get that, would reach that target. And then that really gives the community a chance to have a discussion about, not only what is academic rigor, but which kids do we have dreams for? And if they can't get to 100%, part of the process is to discuss, okay, who are the kids in the 20%, and why don't we have dreams for them? And if we don't have dreams for them, then what services or opportunities are we not providing for them? So it's a really, really important and rich discussion, and really, I think, the key to raising expectations, which is, the foundation of doing school improvement, is just expecting higher achievement to begin with. So, okay, so then after we dream in December, then in January we come back to goals. come back to reality, and we're looking at goals. And in this step, your school improvement team, your community and your faculty will watch a webcast about data, how to use data to set goals. And the only way that we use data is to say all of our data is expressed as a percentage of a certain group that reaches a certain benchmark by a certain time. So it's very, very simple. It's just, can you count? If you can, then you can figure out that, 30 of these 60 kids have reached this benchmark. So we'll show this webcast. Then we'll give your school improvement team, the faculty and the community, a link to your school's achievement data. We will pull that data off of several other people's websites, like the Department of Ed's website, and put it all in one place so that your faculty and your community can look at it. And then the questions that we ask there are, what in this data pleases you, what concerns you, and where do you see achievement gaps? And then there'll be a whole discussion around that. And then your steering team will say, okay, here are the primary areas that we think our school needs to work on. And these are very broad areas. It might be just math, or it might be English, or it might be a specific course on Algebra 1. But they're very, very broad areas. And then they'll also define what the Department of Ed calls SMART goals. We have in the past called them data targets, but we're aligning our terminology now with the Department of Ed's terminology. So SMART goals are very specific goals. They say, it's, this group of kids we want to improve. This is the benchmark we want them to reach. Here's our baseline data. Here's our target data, and this is the date that we want this to happen by. So that's a SMART goal. It's a very specific goal, and it tells how much you want to reach, who's going to reach it, and when you're going to get there by. So you'll also develop those SMART goals in this goal step. And then, of course, you'll send all of that out to your school improvement team to get consensus on that. And again, that consensus is so important because if people don't believe in this, they're not going to work towards it. We also want you to be, the steering team, to be able to identify where resistance might be sprouting up so that you can address it. And we'll give you tips on how to do that. So, okay, so in January we're setting goals. And then that brought us into February, which I think is where you all came in, my apology. But in February, we're looking at, of course, the root causes. Why aren't we achieving those goals? And then what are we going to do about it? The interventions, how are we going to address those root causes? And then the idea is that if we put in the right interventions to address the right root causes, then our achievement will go up. And then we talked about the conference. And then the last step was preparation. Again, we think that we want to make sure that those interventions are done well. Worst case scenario is that the interventions are just on paper, they never get in place, or they get in place but they're haphazard. And so we really want to make sure that the interventions are happening like they're supposed to happen. Okay, so that's the process. Now let me check and see if anybody else has any questions. Here, I'm scrolling through participants. I'm not seeing any hands up. I don't see any more typed in questions. So good. So let's go to the online system now. And so we will provide your school with an online system that is customized for your school. So this is what the welcome page looks like when you log in. And you can see on the left there are tabs that are kind of like shortcuts to get to different parts of the system. And I want to show you some of those tabs and what's behind them. First one that we'll look at is the SIP Uses tab, the top blue tab. And when you click on that tab, you'll go to this page, and this is where you customize the online system. So you'll tell the system, we want to use our school improvement plan to meet Indiana rules and regulations, including PL 221. When you click that, the system will make sure that you are doing everything that you need to be compliant with PL 221. You also will tell the system if DOE has designated you as a priority school or a focus school, and when you do those two things, then again, the system gets customized to make sure that everything in school improvement that you need to be doing to meet DOE's requirements for a priority or a focus school is going to happen. Then, if you're a title school, you can also tell us if you're planning on using your school improvement plan to meet requirements as a targeted assistance school or a school-wide school. And again, we'll customize that. For a lot of this, it's making sure that any strategies or interventions that are required by these different outside organizations are dropped into your school improvement plan, and then that forces you to develop them when you get to those sections. So that's the SIP Uses tab. And then the next tab I wanted to show you is the Process tab. This is really the guts of our system. So in each system, there is a process that's organized by month. So if we just look at September, here's the things to do in September. And we've broken it down step by step. Sometimes that makes it look like a lot, like there's 9 steps in September, but it's not really that much. It's just that we've broken everything down into little steps so that we make sure that you don't miss anything. So the first step is to read an introduction. The second step is to watch a webcast. And that webcast will always be available for you a week before the webinar that we'll have to go over that each month. Then there's different things. So participate in a learning community, that is the webinar. Enter SIP uses, enter steering team members, watch the steering team member webcast, enter the primary contact, enter how you're going to delegate your tasks among the steering team members, and then review the rubric. So each month there's just, we've just broken it down. We like to think of this as like a cookbook. Here's step 1, step 2, step 3. And then as you do each step, you just check it off. That this doesn't do anything for us, but it tells you, okay, I've done that part. I'm ready now for the next step. So, okay, then a couple other things. You'll notice here that there is an enter column, a report column, and then a submission column. I want to talk about those a little bit. So this is just blowing up step 8. So steering team positions. If I were to click on this, that would give me some boxes where I would, my steering team members would already be assigned. That would just give me some checklists where I would tell the system who on the steering team is assigned to which positions. So this is always going to be a checklist or a text box or somehow you're entering information. Then the next icon, the middle one, is where you can print a report. So all the information that you entered it spits out on this nice report that has your school's name at the top, and it's just a nice report. And then the third icon is a submit icon. Some of you, not all, it's optional, but some of you have not only signed up to use all of our resources, but you also wanted us to provide some leadership team support for you. So if you have opted into that leadership team support, you'll have a submit button there where you click it. That gives our staff notice that you want us to look at something. And then we would go in and look at your work, make sure that it's meeting not only our standards for school improvement planning, but also DOE's standards for school improvement planning, be it title or PO 221 or focus or priority school. So we're kind of looking over your shoulder as you go through each of these steps. And if there's a place where we think that there's an issue, we'll let you know. So the way you get feedback then, if you have opted into this additional support, the way you get feedback is in that the row that says review rubric items. When you click on that report, you get this. And if you have not opted into the extra feedback, you just get the rubric, and so you can check it yourself. Does our steering team include a principal, 2 teachers, a counselor, parent, economic development rep? Are the point positions assigned? You can just check that yourself. But if you want us to be looking over your shoulder and you've opted in, we'll do that check for you as well. You'll see, what I have in red here is typically what we would provide, and then comments. Great job of putting together the steering team, and so forth. We also assign each submission a status. The status might say meets criteria, which means that it not only meets our rubric, but from our third-party read, we think you're doing okay with DOE's rubric, in title rubric. And then, or the status might say, it's okay, but see comments. So we might write something like in there, like on minutes, we might write, you know, the minutes were great, but we noticed that your community rep didn't say anything during your meeting, you know, your economic development rep. You might want to, you know, draw them out a little bit more in your next meeting. Or we might say, you know, have you noticed that for the past 3 meetings you've not had any of your parent representatives at the meeting? You know, you need to make sure that they're starting to come. So we're checking all along the way for red flags that might be an indication that you're starting to not be as engaged with groups. Or we might pick up on things like on goals. We might say, hey, did you realize your goal is below your target data is below your current data? You know, which would make no sense at all. So we're coaching a lot in this section. And then the other status that you could get is please revise. And for example, if you had a goal that was below where you were currently, you know, we would definitely ask you to revise that. So if you have opted in for the additional, I think it was a $500 charge to have us be monitoring and providing feedback and checking and mentoring and coaching, this is the kind of stuff you're going to get from us. In addition to the on-call support, where you can just call us immediately to get help, you know, when you need it. We have for schools that have opted into this additional support, we have this thing that we call the 5-minute rule, which is if you are ever confused for more than 5 minutes, you are required to call us. And we're really, I know when I was in the schools, I hated working with a consultant where, you know, you're on your prep period and you want an answer right now and you can't get a call back for 3 days. That used to drive me crazy. So we've kept our staff to school ratio low enough that you should be able to get if not an answer immediately, an answer as soon as they hang up with the previous person, they'll call you. So anyway, so I wanted to show you that. I think this is kind of a hallmark of our work as well, is the way we provide feedback. The other commitment we have is that this feedback comes within 48 hours. So our staff really works hard to make sure that once you do submit something that you've got that feedback from us right away. So that's kind of how the feedback works, again, I think it's a very, very rich part of our process. That said, we have schools that have worked with us for over 10 years, and they could probably teach this process. They probably don't need this level of support. And if that's the case, if that school feels comfortable doing an in-house review, they, you know, then would not participate in this feature and do their own review, and that's fine too. Okay, okay, a couple of additional tools. I wanted to show you that this is what a typical achievement data chart would look like, and in this case, all of this data was auto-populated from the Department of Ed, so you don't need to worry about you know, auto-populating that data. We've discovered a way to be able to just pull that data right off of DOE's website and populate it into our website for you. We also have a data table wizard, so that if there's some data that you're using, like Terra Nova or NWEA data, or if you even have like one of our schools had I think it was a math times multiplication quiz that they thought was really, really important. And so I vaguely remember that it was called the Rainbow Test for some reason. So their chart title was Rainbow Test, you know, multiplication skills. The student group was, you know, all 5th graders or whoever, and then the benchmark was the percentage that they wanted them to get right within a certain time frame, and then what the data source was, and then the notes one is just extra for anything that you want to put in. But when you create, so we have this feature where you can create your own data table. It would look a lot like this one, but you would have to type in the data because it's not something that we can auto-populate from somewhere else. So, but that's a nice feature. It allows you, again, to customize your online system. Here's an example of what our surveys look like. You know, I expect to earn the Indiana Core 40 diploma. Agree, strongly agree, disagree. We ask the same questions in all of our surveys. So if this were a teacher survey, the question would say, I expect my students to earn the Indiana Core 40 diploma. And then when we print out the reports, we print the responses all together. And that's really interesting. So you're looking at that question about expectations for the Core 40 diploma, and you might look at the kids' responses, and 90% of the kids have said they expect to get it. And then you look at the teachers' responses, and only 40% of the teachers said that they expect the kids to earn this diploma. And then that just opens up a ton of discussion. Why are the kids' expectations higher than the teachers' expectations? And is it going to be an issue that the teachers don't have higher expectations for the kids, and that we need to do something about that? So these are all, again, tied to typical root causes for why schools don't achieve at a higher level. And then that allows you to have discussions about, where are those areas that are getting in the way. So, okay, so those are surveys. This is what kind of the calendar looks like after you get all the interventions in and all of the implementation steps in, like the professional development or securing resources, and then the calendar spits out, and this calendar really guides the implementation. Again, if you've contracted with us to provide the additional support, we're monitoring this as well. There are reports that you'll submit to us that show us if things are happening like you thought and wanted them to be, and we'll kind of mentor and make sure that we're keeping you on track with this. These are crosswalk reports. The one you're looking at now is a new one that we'll have next year that crosswalks your interventions with the turnaround principles, with daily turnaround principles, and this will tell you which of those turnaround principles you're addressing and which you're not addressing. We also align your interventions with several other factors to help you think about where are you where are you spending your time and energy, and where are you not. So again, there's just tools. You don't have to do anything to get these reports. They just, once you've entered the information about each intervention, then the system takes that information and puts it into these reports. We also provide a school improvement plan that after you've done all the data entry, you just push a button and out pops a PDF that then you can just upload to DOE. So each month you're creating a little bit of this school improvement plan, and then again, the beauty of working online is then the system takes all the information out, puts the narrative in, and then just drops the information in where it needs to go into your school improvement plan. So, and again, what I love about it is you just push a button and everything's there. It just saves you so much time. We also provide an option where if you want to post your school improvement plan on a public website, you can. So you just push a button, and then our system creates this this page and it gives you a URL so that you can connect to this from your you can connect from your school's website to this school improvement plan. And you can see that anybody who went to this then could get the PDF version of the whole school improvement plan, or if they just wanted to see your vision statement or your root causes or your interventions, they could click on that. Another resource that's in the online system is a manual. When you go to have discussions or different parts, the manual will give you everything that you need. We will be reworking our entire manual this year to go with the online discussions. But if you wanted to have a face-to-face discussion, the resources will be there as well. So, and nothing that we have, we encourage you to edit our stuff. That if you want to take our name off the top of the page and put your school's name on it, and give the appearance to everyone that you were the ones that created these documents, that is fine with us. We give you permission to edit everything that we use. And same thing with the PowerPoint presentations. If you're doing these face-to-face and there's a slide you don't like, just leave it out. So it's totally up to you. Of course, if you're using the online system for your discussions, that would you wouldn't be able to edit those. But if you're doing face-to-face, you could. Okay, then leadership development. This is another, I think, real strength of our work. And we are trying to create experts in systems change within your school. And I can tell you the schools that have been working with us for 5, 10 years, they do have experts in systemic change. They get it. So the first thing that we do is our organizational structure for professional development is cohorts of schools. So in a virtual learning community. We think that schools have just as much to learn from each other as they have to learn from us, and we learn from the schools. That's how we figure out where we need to improve, is by listening to what the schools are saying. So there will be a virtual learning community, and this year, and this is also something that's new, and I'm really excited about this, we really like the idea of a flipped classroom, a flipped curriculum, where the students received a homework assignment to learn content, and then they came to class to discuss the content. And we really like that idea. We wanted to incorporate that same idea into our professional development. So the way it will work is that your steering team each month will watch a webcast, and then they will participate in an online discussion as a webinar, both with our staff and with some other schools. So we're really excited about that. We sent out in our last update the dates for all the webinars, and then exactly one. This is how our staff communicates. Let me log off here real quickly. I think you're seeing that. Close tabs. And okay, they're just letting me know that one of our staff members' internet is down. Okay. So where were we? Flip professional development. So the webinar dates went out to you, and exactly 1 week before the webinar date, we will have by noon on that day the webcast posted. We would suggest to you that you watch the webcast as a steering team, but it doesn't have to happen like that. Everybody could watch it on their own if they wanted to in their living rooms that night, in the evening, or whatever. And then people will come together for these webinars and ask questions and go with that. Just 1 second. Let me just go ahead and log out of that. I'm sorry. We have a virtual staff, and my apology. We're almost finished. And we use Bixby to have conversations with each other. Okay. So, so we talked about the webinars, and then we mentioned also that if you have chosen to receive this additional support, that we would provide the written feedback, and always within 48 hours of when you submit work to us. So I think it's going to work really well. I'm really excited about this. All of the webcasts and the webinars will be presented and facilitated by me. And then Mary Beth Granderson will be the one who's answering your on-call questions, and we'll be providing the written feedback for you as you submit things if you have opted into that support level. Okay. So there's I think we sent this out in the email, but there's there is the dates. And then we just wanted to point out an accountability that ASA, our organization, is approved by the State Board of Education as a technical support provider for PL 221. And what that means is that we have the authority to certify to DOE that your school improvement plan has met all the requirements of PL 221. And when we send DOE that list of schools that we certify as meeting PL 221, DOE does not conduct a second review. So once we've said you meet the requirements, then that's it. There is no additional read. So a lot of schools have told us that they like that because we give you a chance to redo your work a gazillion times, as many times as you need to in order to meet everybody's expectations. So it kind of, people tell us that they appreciate that. Okay, and then I think this is the final slide. Also wanted to make you aware that we are starting an outreach campaign to recruit new schools. And to kind of encourage our existing schools to help us do that, we're providing kind of a promotion, if you will, that where an existing school can receive our services at half price if they recruit a new school. And the new school can also receive our services this year for half price. So we know that the schools have really limited dollars for professional development. That's part of why we have switched to a webinar format rather than a face-to-face workshop format. But it's allowed us to keep to reduce our costs significantly a few years ago and then keep them down. But this is another way that we can keep the price low for our existing schools and schools that are starting with us, that if you just recruit another school, that gives you a half price. So there's information about that in the SI2 newsletter that went out, I think, on August 15th. But if you have any questions, give us a call. But we'd really, would love the chance to work with additional schools, and this is also a way for us to keep our costs really, really low. I mean, majorly low for the schools that we work with. So I think that is it. If you have questions, give Mary Beth a call, or feel free to call me as well. There's Mary Beth's email address and her phone number. And I know she is eager to answer any questions that you have. Her only responsibility in our organization is to serve our SI2 schools. So please feel free to give her a call. And I'm going to go back on and see if anyone has any questions. Let me see. Really, any hands up? Any questions that pop up in your heads right now? As a new principal, I guess the one thing that I hope you see is that this is a passion for us. Our entire staff started out as educators. We have all been on school improvement teams using this process. When we're hiring new support specialists, we only hire people who have been on SI2 teams and know the process and also know what it's like to be involved in this. So Mary Beth is great. We love this work, and really just any time you need help, please do not hesitate to give us a call. So first webinar is coming up in September, and of course the topic of that one is convening your school improvement team, 6 of you. So I would hold off on putting together your school improvement team until you've participated in that webinar, because we're going to give you lots of tips on how to do that. And then in October we'll be convening the larger school improvement team, and we'll do that in October and give you tips for that at that webinar. So okay, I think that's it. I appreciate everybody's time. I know how busy everyone is, and really looking forward to working with you all this year. Again, we love this work. We love working with the teams that we support. So don't hesitate to call if you need anything. So, okay, thanks so much. I'll sign off, and we'll see you at the September webinar.